My name is Elena Carter, and I live in a red brick townhouse on Pinckney Street in Boston, Massachusetts. I bought it 3 years ago for $1.2 million, a figure that once terrified me but now feels like a symbol of how far I've come. The house has white window trim, polished oak floors, and a kitchen that always smells faintly of lemon oil because I can't go to bed until every counter gleams. My parents, Linda and Robert, never liked it. "Too serious for a woman like you," my mother said once, looking around as if she expected to find an apron hanging from the doorknob. What she meant was that she couldn't imagine her daughter, the one she believed worked as a waitress, owning something so refined. My brother, Dr. Michael Carter, was the pride of the family. A respected physician in downtown Boston, he wore expensive suits and an ego even larger than his paycheck. My parents adored him and called him their success story. When word spread that he was marrying a woman named Julia Bennett, a young researcher from one of the city's best hospitals, my parents treated it like a royal event. They bragged about it to anyone who'd listen. But I didn't receive an invitation, not even a text. My mother hinted I should stay out of the way because it was a formal affair. She didn't want to admit they were embarrassed by me, the daughter who worked, as they put it, in service. What they never knew was that the Harbor Light Hotel, where the grand wedding was being held, belonged to me. Through my company, North Atlantic Hospitality, I had purchased and renovated the Harbor Light 2 years earlier. It was one of 6 properties I owned along the New England coast, each one run with care and heart. But I stayed quiet about it. I liked my privacy. I enjoyed being among the staff, not above them. Sometimes, when a bartender called in sick or a server couldn't make their shift, I would step in, put on a uniform, tie my hair back, and carry trays. It reminded me of where I came from. It kept me grounded. To my family, though, that was all they saw. A girl in an apron. A helper. A nobody. 2 weeks before the wedding, I received a message from Julia, short and curious. It read, "Thank you." Nothing else. I didn't know what she was thanking me for, but something in that message made me decide to go to the wedding. I didn't need an invitation to walk into a building I owned. The afternoon of the event, I stood before the hotel's shining white facade, the wind from the harbor brushing my hair back. Guests in tailored suits and pastel gowns streamed inside, their laughter rising over the soft notes of a string quartet. I entered quietly, my heels clicking on marble floors I'd chosen myself. Gold accents shimmered along the staircase, and crystal chandeliers reflected like stars on the glossy tiles. Every inch of that hotel whispered my work. At the entrance of the ballroom, I saw my brother. He was greeting guests with that practiced doctor's smile. When his eyes met mine, his expression changed. He froze, then scowled. "What are you doing here?" he hissed. "A waiter is not allowed in this wedding." The music faltered for just a second. A few guests turned their heads. My mother, standing near the cake table, went pale and clutched her pearls. My father looked anywhere but at me. I stood there, calm, my hands clasped in front of me. I could have told them everything, the truth about the building, the business, the money, but I didn't. Not yet. Then the curtain at the back of the stage moved, and Julia appeared. Her white gown shimmered beneath the lights like rippling water. She glanced between me and Michael, her brows knitting together. "Shut your mouth," she said sharply to him, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "That's my boss. If not for her, I wouldn't even be alive." The room fell silent. Even the quartet stopped playing. My brother's jaw slackened. My parents stared at Julia in confusion. And every single guest turned toward me, the woman they had mistaken for a nobody. Tom Reyes, the head of hotel security, came forward quickly. He knew me well from years of quiet cooperation behind the scenes. "Miss Carter," he said in a steady tone, "would you like me to handle this?" I nodded slightly. "Please make sure the bride has a chair and some water," I said evenly. "Then escort my brother to the Harbor View office. I'll meet him there shortly." Tom didn't question it. He simply obeyed, as he always did, because in this hotel, my word was law. Gasps moved through the crowd like ripples in a pond. My mother stepped forward, her voice trembling with forced control. "Elena," she whispered, "don't make a scene." I turned to her and smiled. A calm, confident smile I had learned to wear after years of being underestimated. "Mother," I said, my voice firm but quiet. "I built the scene. I'm only fixing it." And with that, I turned away, my heels tapping softly on the marble as I walked toward the elevator that led to my office on the top floor. The whispers followed me, growing louder with every step. For years, they had all looked down on me. To them, I was the invisible one, the poor daughter, the help, the one who never amounted to anything. But tonight, in the grandest ballroom in Boston, beneath lights I paid for and under a roof with my name on the deed, the truth had finally started to surface. And I hadn't even said a word yet. I didn't wake up one morning owning a hotel. It took years, cold nights, cheap coffee, and a determination I couldn't explain to anyone. At 19, I worked the front desk at a roadside lodge in New Hampshire, earning $11 an hour plus whatever change travelers dropped into the tip jar. The carpets smelled faintly of pine cleaner, and the heating vents rattled like tired lungs in winter. I learned to make strong coffee, fold towels sharp enough to cut air, and keep my voice calm no matter who stood across the counter. The night manager, a kind older man named Harold, taught me more than college ever could. "The difference between broke and rich," he said once, "is who signs the paycheck." Those words stuck with me. Every time I handed a key card across the counter, I imagined handing over ownership papers instead. By 24, I scraped together enough for a down payment, $480,000, on a small, 16-room motel just outside Portsmouth. It was a wreck when I bought it, with peeling paint, cracked parking lines, and neon letters that flickered like dying fireflies. I didn't care. I rolled up my sleeves and rebuilt it one wall at a time. I painted, repaired, cleaned, and worked the front desk myself. When the first guest gave me a handwritten thank you note for fixing their heater during a snowstorm, I taped it above the register. That tiny note felt worth more than any paycheck I'd ever gotten. For years later, I sold that motel for $1.1 million, enough to buy a bigger place on Cape Cod. I renovated again, built a new kitchen, added a small ocean view deck, and learned how to negotiate contracts like a pro. That was the year North Atlantic Hospitality was born, a company that would grow into 6 properties spread across Maine, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, bringing in over $45 million annually. That success didn't happen by luck. It happened because I never forgot what it felt like to wipe down tables or refill sugar jars for people who never looked up. I learned every corner of the business, the way the dishwasher hums when it's overworked, the rhythm of footsteps in a hallway when guests are happy, and the silence when something is wrong. It was at my second property that I met Julia Bennett. She walked in with a resume folded 3 times and a voice that shook only a little. "I'll do anything," she'd said. "Just give me a start." I hired her as a front desk assistant, and within 6 months, she was running the entire staff schedule better than I ever had. Julia was sharp, quick, and endlessly loyal. She didn't flinch when things got hard. She thrived on fixing problems that others avoided. 5 years later, she became my operations lead, helping me expand the company to include the Harbor Light Hotel, the one where my brother's wedding was now unfolding. She knew every employee by name, remembered their birthdays, and sometimes slipped grocery cards into pay envelopes when someone was struggling. She reminded me of the person I'd been before success, someone who worked because they had no other choice but refused to complain. Last year, during a brutal nor'easter, Julia worked 12-hour shifts for 6 days straight to cover for 6 staff. On the 7th day, she collapsed in a service corridor. I found her just as the paramedics were loading her onto a stretcher. That night, sitting beside her hospital bed, I made a promise to myself. I'd never let this company chew people up again. When she woke up, she whispered, "Don't fire me." I laughed through tears. "You're the reason this place runs," I told her. But I did make her cut back her hours and train 2 assistants. I also added new safety protocols, staff health coverage, and emergency leave, all paid in full by the company. My parents never heard about any of it. They only knew their son was a doctor and their daughter waited tables. It was during Julia's recovery that she met Michael, my brother, through a medical partnership the hotel funded for staff health programs. He was charming, successful, and exactly the kind of man my parents would have wanted for her. I stayed quiet when she mentioned his name, not wanting to poison her happiness with the truth about my family. She told me he made her laugh and treated her with kindness, so I kept my secret. Now, sitting in my Harbor View office, the glass walls stretching from floor to ceiling, I stared at the framed photo from the hotel's grand opening. I was there in an apron, standing beside the chef, smiling like I belonged among them. And I did. That was the only photo of me displayed anywhere in the building. When Michael walked in with Tom Reyes, our head of security, behind him, the air thickened. His jaw was tight, and his voice was sharp. "You can't control me here," he said. "This is my wedding." "This," I said calmly, "is my building. And the woman you just humiliated is my employee, and your bride. Sit down." He didn't at first. Then, when he realized I wasn't bluffing, he sat across from me, glaring like a child caught stealing. "Why lie to everyone?" he demanded. "Why pretend to be poor? It's sick." I leaned back in my chair. "I never lied. You never asked. You liked the story where I was small. It made your title sound bigger. I've spent my life building something real while you've been busy collecting validation." He turned away, his voice quieter now. "You embarrass me." I smiled faintly. "You shouted at your sister in a room I pay to heat. You did that yourself." He stared down at his hands. I could see the confusion settling in. The brother who once sneered at my uniform was finally sitting in a chair I bought, in an office I designed, in a hotel I owned, and he couldn't find a single word to make it right. Outside the glass, I could see Julia sitting on a white chair, still in her wedding gown, her hands shaking as she spoke with Tom. She looked so small and so strong at the same time. I turned back to my brother and said quietly, "You've built your life on titles, Michael. Doctor, son, groom. I've built mine at work. And work doesn't need permission to walk into its own building." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The truth had already filled the room, heavy and undeniable. That was the moment I stopped being invisible to my family, when they finally realized I wasn't a servant in someone else's story. I was the one who owned the walls around them. The ballroom music floated faintly through the walls, a reminder that the celebration continued without us. Inside the Harbor View office, silence pressed heavier than the carpet beneath my heels. I pulled open a drawer and took out a thick folder labeled operational records. I always kept paper copies of every deal, every contract, every insurance clause, because power, I'd learned, was not in who shouts the loudest, but in who holds the proof. Michael sat across from me, the crisp edge of his tuxedo jacket brushing the arm of the chair. His face, once smug with confidence, now carried the stunned disbelief of someone realizing his story wasn't the only one being written. "This," I said, laying the first sheet before him, "is the lease agreement for the Harbor Light Hotel." I placed another page down. "This is the payroll ledger, which includes your bride's salary and the bonus she received for training her assistants. These," I continued, flipping open another tab, "are the maintenance invoices for the generators that kept your rehearsal dinner powered last night when the storm almost cut us off. And this," I slid forward a page stamped in blue, "is the updated insurance policy. You'll notice Clause 7C. I wrote it after Julia's collapse last year. It covers staff emergencies, guests, and private events. Meaning, this entire wedding is protected under my name." He didn't reach for the papers. He only stared at them, his expression hollowing out with every page I placed between us. "You saved her," he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. "She saved herself," I replied. "I just gave her the system to stay alive." For a long moment, we sat there, two siblings from the same family but worlds apart. I'd spent years building, while he'd spent years believing titles were enough. The door burst open. My mother's perfume entered the room before she did, sharp, floral, and unwelcome. My father followed, looking exhausted, The kind of tired that came from years of pretending to understand people he'd never truly seen. Fix this, my mother snapped, her voice tight with fear. We cannot have a scandal tonight. There is no scandal, I said calmly. Only the truth. You can live with it, or you can leave with it. My father cleared his throat softly. Elena, he began in his diplomatic tone, you know your brother has worked hard for everything he's achieved. He deserves respect. I looked him dead in the eye. Respect isn't a tip you hand out at dinner, Dad. It's earned. And right now, he's earning it back the hard way. My mother stepped forward, trembling with fury. You're speaking to us as if we're your employees. I stood, my voice steady. No, Mother. I speak this way because for years, you've treated me as if I were one of yours, beneath you, disposable. That ends tonight. Her lips parted, but I didn't let her interrupt. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. Michael will walk back into that ballroom, apologize to me and to Julia in front of everyone, and thank the staff who've been working since sunrise. He'll do it on the microphone, so no one leaves this hotel carrying a different version of the story. After that, I'll let the evening continue as planned. But if he refuses, I leaned closer. Then the event is over. You'll all be escorted out, because this hotel, and every single employee in it, answers to me. My mother's face turned pale, her lips trembling in disbelief. You wouldn't dare, she said. I smiled faintly. I would. And I can. I also know where your car is parked, and I can make sure it's waiting at the exit in 3 minutes if you'd like to test me. From the corner of my eye, I saw Tom Reyes, our head of security, still standing by the door, silent, composed, loyal. He didn't need to move. His presence alone confirmed my authority. Power isn't a raised voice. It's the calm certainty that no one can pull the rug out from under you anymore. Michael rubbed his temples, his voice cracking slightly. Fine. I'll apologize, he said finally. I didn't know. No, I said, soft but firm. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. You chose the version of me that made you feel bigger. He looked up, guilt in his eyes. Then tell me what you want from me. I pushed a final folder toward him. You want to make things right? Then let's do something useful. You're a doctor. You see overworked hospital staff every day. You'll set up a hardship grant for them, a fund to help those who work double shifts, skip meals, and can barely afford rest. You'll donate $100,000 from your own account. I'll match it dollar for dollar. Consider it your wedding gift to the city you say you serve. He flinched. I can do 50. I crossed my arms. You're wearing a watch worth more than that. You can do 100. My father opened his mouth to protest, but my mother stopped him with a glance. Even she understood now that I was beyond persuasion. Michael exhaled, shoulders slumping. Fine, he said. 100. You'll match. I'll match, I confirmed. Today. He nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the papers as if he were seeing them for the first time. You're serious? I've never been anything else, I said. Outside, the faint hum of conversation filtered in. The ballroom had resumed its rhythm. Music, laughter, the clinking of glasses, but I knew gossip was already spreading. The story of the waitress sister, who wasn't what she seemed, would travel faster than any champagne pour. My mother folded her arms tightly. This will humiliate us, she said bitterly. No, I replied. This will define us. The difference is whether you choose to be ashamed or to learn. For a moment, no one spoke. My father finally nodded, his voice low. Let her lead, Linda. She's earned it. My mother said nothing. Michael rose from his chair and adjusted his tie, looking 10 years older than he had when I first walked in. All right, he murmured. Let's go. As he reached for the door, I stopped him. One more thing, I said. When you stand there and apologize, don't do it because I demanded it. Do it because the woman you married deserves to see you choose decency over pride. He nodded. I understand. When the door shut behind them, I sank back into my chair. The tension left the room slowly, like air escaping a balloon. I looked out the glass wall toward the harbor, the city lights glimmering across the water. My reflection stared back, steady, certain, and finally visible. For years, I'd carried the quiet burden of being underestimated. Tonight, I'd set it down. Tonight, they all saw what I'd become, not the servant in their story, but the author of my own. When I walked back into the ballroom, the air shifted. The lights from the chandeliers glowed softer now, and every face turned toward the stage where my brother stood gripping the microphone. The string quartet had gone silent. Only the faint hum of the harbor wind slipped through the tall glass doors. Michael looked at me first, then at the guests. He cleared his throat, his voice trembling slightly as he began. "Before we continue this evening," he said, "I owe someone an apology, someone I should have respected long before tonight." His eyes flicked toward me again, uncertain but sincere. "To my sister, Elena, I'm sorry for the way I treated you. I let pride make me blind. And to everyone working here, the people who make nights like this possible, thank you. You're the heart of this place." A quiet ripple spread through the room, like air being let out of a balloon. Then came a slow, honest round of applause. It wasn't thunderous or dramatic, but it was real. My mother smiled for the photographers, but didn't look my way. My father, standing behind her, reached for my hand and squeezed gently. "I never understood you," he whispered. "You never tried," I said softly, but there was no anger left in me. Only clarity. After the speech, people came forward one by one, old family friends, distant cousins, even some of Michael's hospital colleagues, to offer polite congratulations or quiet apologies of their own. I accepted each with a nod and a smile. I wasn't there to humiliate anyone. I was there to reclaim my name. Julia found me later near the dessert table, still in her gown, her veil draped over her arm. Her eyes shimmered under the warm light. "You kept my secret," she said, "even after everything." "It wasn't my secret," I told her. "It was your love story, and you had the right to tell it when you were ready." Tears welled in her eyes. "You're my boss," she said, voice cracking, "and my friend. My life is better because you believed in me." "We believed in each other," I said, touching her shoulder. "That's how good work and good people survive." The rest of the evening carried a quiet peace. Michael danced with Julia under the soft light of the chandeliers. My parents mingled with distant relatives, and the staff worked with a calm rhythm I knew well. The storm that had threatened to ruin the night had passed, outside and within. By midnight, when the final toast was made and the last champagne flute was cleared away, I slipped out of the ballroom. The harbor air was cool and sweet, and the moonlight glistened across the dark water. I drove home through the quiet streets of Boston, the city lights flickering like stars on the pavement. When I opened the door to my brick townhouse on Pinckney Street, the familiar scent of lemon oil greeted me. I took off my heels, lined them neatly by the mat, and sank into the couch I'd bought years ago at a charity auction for $600. The fabric was soft and comforting beneath my hands. I poured myself a small glass of bourbon and opened my laptop. The screen's glow lit the room as I completed the transfer, $100,000 from Michael's new fund, $100,000 from North Atlantic Hospitality, the company I had built from the ground up. Together, it would create the Julia Bennett Hardship Grant, dedicated to supporting hospitality workers who carried too much, too often, for too little. I added a note to the transfer, for those who make every guest feel at home, but rarely have one waiting for them. When I clicked send, I felt something lift inside me, a small, quiet joy that came from doing something right, something lasting. On the coffee table sat a folder from a London investment firm. They wanted me to partner on a boutique hotel project in Europe, a £5 million venture that could expand my company overseas. The old me would have said nothing, kept it quiet, built it in silence just to avoid judgment. But the woman sitting there now, the one who could walk into her own ballroom and hold her ground, felt ready to build in the open. The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows, painting the hardwood floors gold. I made pancakes for my senior management team, Tom Reyes, Julia, and a few others, who gathered around my kitchen table. We discussed the future, paid sabbaticals, staff education programs, and a 2% revenue fund dedicated to worker welfare. We'll grow, I told them, flipping the next pancake, but not at the cost of the people who make it possible. Julia smiled through her coffee mug. You mean you'll still wear the apron? Twice a month, I said. That's now an official rule. We laughed, and for the first time in years, the laughter didn't feel guarded. It was real. Later that week, I heard the knock I'd expected. My parents stood on the sidewalk outside my townhouse, looking at the building as if it had appeared overnight. My mother's voice trembled slightly when she said, I don't like how you spoke to me that night. I folded my arms, steady but not cold. I don't like how you spoke about me for the last 10 years. She flinched but said nothing. My father, ever the mediator, stepped forward. We'd like to start over, Elena, he said. If you'll let us. I nodded slowly. You can be part of my life, but only if you learn my name as it is. Elena Carter. Owner. Builder.
Sister.
Friend. My father smiled faintly, a tired but honest smile. Then I'd like to get to know her. That night, after they left, I walked back to the Harbor Light Hotel. The city was quiet, the streets slick from a drizzle. When I reached the entrance, the gold letters above the door gleamed softly under the lamps. Inside, I could hear the low hum of the evening shift, plates clinking, music playing, laughter spilling from the bar. A young couple stood at the reception desk, hands linked, eyes full of wonder. The hostess greeted them with a warm smile and led them inside. In that moment, I saw myself years ago, tired, hopeful, and unaware of everything that would follow. I slipped behind the counter, where a folded apron waited. One of the servers had called out, leaving the team short for the night. Without hesitation, I tied the apron around my waist, picked up a tray of glasses, and stepped into the dining room. Some people still think that a woman who carries a tray must be small, invisible, ordinary. Let them think it. I know the truth. I built the scene. I carry it still. And I will never drop it.